while he gave me a very flowery introduction, and I would like to thank him for that, the fact is that I also learned a lot during these lovely years in the HR world. And a lot of that was in the ITS space, which, as you all probably know, is an area or an industry which continuously hires month after month, year after year. So that exposed me to a lot of what we know as volume or bulk hiring. And the only way to survive in that environment is to deploy technology. So I was very lucky to be able to work with some of the leading players that we today see in the Indian landscape when they were doing their beta testing at least 6 to 8 years ago, and got a first-hand look into what these tools are about as they were being created. And that's where I've developed this passion for this side of recruitment, the technology end, and I keep learning new things every day. And I'm hoping that today I will be able to transfer some of that knowledge and insights to you as part of the dialogue season 2. So thank you once again to all of you for really joining in, sparing your valuable time. I know it's a working day, and I'm sure it must be important enough for you to be able to take out the time. So thanks a lot for that. Without wasting too much time, I'll move ahead. The context needs to be understood as to why we're actually talking about AI and recruitment today, because the reality is that the world has moved tremendously. And if you look at this chart in front of you, it's been in the last 15, 17 years, right? From the time you had LinkedIn come in 2003 to Facebook in 2004. Then the iPhone came in 2007, just about 13 years ago. And literally the whole smartphone revolution started, and our whole experience of interacting with technology, with systems changed dramatically. And then, of course, you had the shared economy of Airbnb and Uber in 2010. So what this clearly tells us is that the consumer has changed. And that is you, me, and the candidates that we want to hire. We can't treat anyone any differently. And that's why we are really talking about this topic. Underlying all these major players that you see on the screen and the others which you don't, like Netflix or an Instagram or a Snapchat, you have an AI engine or an artificial intelligence engine that really is one of their key strength points. And that's what we'll try and understand a bit about today as we look into AI and recruitment. So when you look at AI, the first thing that comes to mind is possibly an image, something like this. It's a term, it's a technology phrase which is fairly given a lot of importance. It's a lot of hype, a lot of negativity associated with it. As Peterson rightly pointed out, there's that bias element. And when one thinks of AI, one thinks of all of this, very science tech kind of imagery of this very smart young looking man who I believe looks like me. My wife doesn't agree at all. So I've learned to live with that reality. But the fact is that this scene is from a movie which is very popular and very path breaking. I don't know if some of you can share in the chat if they recognize which movie this scene is from. Any takers? Lovely. Raman says Minority Report. So brilliant, bang on, Raman. And very interestingly, I want to talk about this movie a little bit because it's based on a book written in 1954. It's set in the year 2056. The movie itself got released in the year 2002, just about 18 years ago. And what the main premise of this movie was, for those who didn't see it or don't know, is that Tom Cruise here is part of a unit in the police, which is called a pre-crime unit. Using data, they are able to predict crimes that would happen in the future, and therefore take proactive steps to stop those crimes before they could even happen. Just imagine, just rethink the premise. Proactively look at or determine future crimes and prevent them from happening now itself. And that's really, in a lot of ways, what AI is doing already, bits and pieces of it, as we'll discover as we go forward. And some parts of it, honestly speaking, are already there, impacting us in our day-to-day lives. So let's see what that is all about. So what is AI? Again, to demystify the bit, because this is very critical, this understanding, before you actually get into where it fits into the recruitment piece. It's really where computers become intelligent, become independent. So it's a branch of computer science which focuses on getting computers to become intelligent and independent without human interaction. How is that? For the in common parlance. Now, if you look at AI per se, there are two main blocks to it. There is the symbolic learning part, and there is the machine learning part. I'm going a little bit slow here because I want you to understand the context. The symbolic learning here, it talks about uh, elements like robotics, like image recognition. The machine learning part is the part that deals with a lot of data analysis and churning out or understanding big data and seeing the predictions around it. So if you look at a product, or let's say a self-driving car that Google is producing, it uses a combination of both your symbolic sciences, which is your learning, which is your image recognition. Is there a child in the way? Is there a tree coming in the path? And then there is a lot of data churning happening in the background to take those real-time quick decisions and say, I need to change track or I need to apply brakes without a human driver saying, apply the brakes. So in a lot of ways, AI is really driving the ability of machines to imitate human beings. And you're seeing some of that on the screen there in what different ways that is happening, whether it's language or speech. This is a very critical element which will come to play in the recruitment piece when we go a little bit into depth in that, in the sense that a lot of the recruitment process, whether it is CVs, whether it is the interview screening, whether it is applications, depends a lot on our natural writing and typing or speaking. And natural language processing actually looks at uh, giving computers the power to ascertain. Typically for you and me as a humans is very easy, but for a machine it's really breaking through a lot of barriers and going into the future, like they say. And of course there's vision, image recognition, making predictions, learning, problem solving, and the ability to even move or manipulate objects. So all of this seen in combination, and you'll see different threads of this coming through when we talk about this in context of recruitment, are really what constitutes AI. So moving forward, there are shortcomings of recruitment, and that's why really AI is now getting due recognition in the HR recruitment business space. What are the shortcomings? I'm sure all of us are aware at some level if you've chosen to be part of this webinar today. For one, it is a highly uh, disoriented, or you can say process which has not really evolved much for the last 20-30 years. Sure, we've moved from putting advertisements in the Times of India or the Hindustan Times, and then getting familiar with Naukri job ports or Monster and all of that. Today a lot of us source from LinkedIn and some of the new platforms that are available. But if you look at the underlying thread of recruitment, not much has really changed. And in the last few years, the rapid changes in technology have actually given us that advantage. So if you look at time and labor, critically a big pain for anyone who's in recruitment function, calling a candidate, scheduling a call, then clearing that candidate, and then scheduling it with 2 or 3 panel members whose times have to be again taken, and then it has to be in agreement with the candidate's time, and so on. So I'm sure if there are any TA folks on this call, they'll probably understand what I'm saying, and it'll be something that really touches them straight to the heart. It's also organization focused in the sense that how many times do we really put candidates first? It's great to talk about it, it's candidate experience and all of that, but if you go to LinkedIn today, and if there was a way to do a check on which is the most uh, commonly spoken about topic in the area of talent acquisition, I can bet that it will be something related to candidates not getting feedback after the interview, because we really don't have the time for that, do we don't have the bandwidth to do that, even if we have the will at some level. It's also very human dependent. I have been in functions heading them when we've had a situation where there is one particular recruiter who's very good at hiring for investment banking profiles, and she decides to leave the organization and all hell breaks loose. Because why? No one else knows that line of recruitment. So it's a broken process in my view if your team cannot survive if just one individual wants to move. And of course, the core thing that it's very reactive, it's not a proactive process. I mean, how many times do you hire for the future? that you are likely to need an analyst 6 months down, so you start the groundwork today. It's always that someone has put down the papers, the business manager will call you, and you'll start running, uh, and the clock has started. So that's really the shortcomings of the recruitment process that needed fixing, and hopefully AI will help us solve that. Let's see. So which parts of the recruitment life cycle does AI play its role, and where will it continue to grow bigger and stronger, is where really the thrust of this presentation is all about. And I'll try and throw some light here. If you look at the recruitment life cycle, pretty much the entire stack. In fact, I would begin with employer branding even before the sourcing piece starts, because that's where AI is already making inroads. And then you'll move on to, of course, sourcing, where it plays a huge role in taking off some of that load we spoke about. It's screening and assessments, it's interviews, and of course the onboarding, which is really what every TA professional just wants to get done with. So let's look at each one of these elements in slightly greater detail. So when you look at employer branding, not many TA folks still own it or feel that it is part of the so-called recruitment life cycle. I firmly believe it is, and I think the sooner everyone else understands that, I think it'll be better for the function. You have to understand that your organization as a entity that can tap talent or attract talent is only as strong as its employer branding messages that are going out. That starts really with internal employees, which of course your HR team is supposed to ensure are engaged and having the right experience in their organization. As a recruiter or as a talent acquisition professional, your core aim also should be to ensure that that same message is going out into the market where your talent resides. Now, what does AI help us in this context? Two main things. One is that AI is a 24/7, 365 days kind of working employee. So doesn't need an off day, doesn't need to sleep at night like the rest of us. The second is that the amount of mass customization it allows is just intense. And that's where, as you are seeing in other spheres of a life, let's say I open an Amazon app today. The products that will be pushed to my screen in terms of triggering that purchase impulse will be very different to what my wife will see when she opens her Amazon app. And that's exactly what is going to be happening as part of the recruitment process. I'll explain how. We are moving away from a one size fits all approach to a one size fits one. And therefore, your employee value proposition as an organization, as a recruitment firm, will also have to be customized. Let's assume for a minute you're a large IT organization, you want to attract people all the time. But imagine an organization like the likes of a TCS or a Wipro, which is over 200,000 employees, over 150,000 employees. And here, if you're going to say that one message is going to be sufficient for all, I don't agree. I think while there has to be an overarching underlying theme, you will need to have customized elements will appeal to different sub-communities within that workforce. So if there is let's say a person who's passionate about running or fitness, you have certain elements in your culture which are around fitness, which is you provide a gym, and customized messages related to that can actually be pushed onto that candidate's feed. Just like when you scroll through a Facebook feed and you see ads which are relevant to you. Similarly, if it's a young mother who's coming back to the workforce after having her baby, chances are that she may feel motivated to apply if she sees that your organization has a creche. And believe me, most IT companies today have both, right? So if they show a creche to a guy who's really into physical fitness and wants to possibly at some stage do the Ironman, it's not really going to trigger that right cue in his brain, right? So the employer branding area or the AI element in this area for TA is really where digital marketing meets human resources. So if a prospective candidate is coming to your website and happens to just browse through the career section, does not see anything useful currently, your systems today, thanks to AI, if they have that inbuilt capability, can actually reach out to that candidate maybe 2 to 3 months down when that suitable position is available. That's what cookies and all the other underlying machine learning algorithms can actually do for you. So this is what I see critically happening within the TA space, where even the TFP folks or recruiters will need to understand the digital landscape of reaching out to employees, rather than just putting a LinkedIn post saying looking for a Java developer, which is exactly what honestly we are seeing most of the times nowadays. Correct? So moving on to the next element, which is the sourcing piece, which is possibly the biggest bane in any recruiter's neck, is the fact that even today, about 75 to 80% of the profiles that you end up screening are possibly reject profiles, isn't it? And the amount of trouble that you take to actually reach out to these candidates, to talk to them, to figure out the basic details, and then take that basic screening reject decision and tick mark it in the system and move on to the next. The amount of man hours companies are already saving by deploying AI backed systems is mind boggling. I mean, if you just go online and do research or talk to people in large companies, they'll tell you that. The bigger element really is the first bullet there, which is proactive. Now imagine a scenario where you get a lead time of 3-6 months because your internal databases are able to be screened by checked by your algorithms to actually highlight cases of candidates who systems can check are unsettled, possibly looking out, may not last to the organization. So your systems can actually trigger that search or database creation right at that stage itself, before even the person raises his or her resignation in the system. And that's already happening because of predictive analytics that a lot of organizations have put into their HRIS systems, where they're tracking the mood and the health of the workforce on an ongoing basis. You also are able to expand your hiring or sourcing, because again, as a recruiter, you don't have unlimited time and you don't have that ability to reach out to so many candidates on an ongoing basis. Here there are some amazing high-end chatbots which are also very mainstream in a sense, while they are high-end, which are able to on most CVs. You will never find facts like notice period, what is the expected compensation that the candidate is expecting, and these are certain elements which are very critical for your hiring decision, or to take forward the candidate into the cycle. These chatbots can actually do what is called the augmentation piece of talking to the candidates through a normal chat interaction, and enabling and extracting all of this information to build the entire candidate profile. Again, what is also helpful in this stage, with the sourcing stage as far as AI goes, is the amount of great work that has happened on the natural language processing piece that we spoke about earlier. Here, there are companies and solutions which can help you make fine-tuned JDs. Typically, what happens in any organization, and I've been guilty of the same, is that when a new position comes in, we take another existing job description, we cut paste it, we may change a few bullets here and there, we may add or delete some of them, but by and large, that's how it's done. And it's not a scientifically defined process or a standardized process in many organizations. So it's something that has been going on for legacy, and we continue to pull it along. The advantage of these platforms is that, having done NLP work on huge amounts of databases, they are able to actually pinpoint and provide you corrections for your job descriptions to make them more attractive to candidates. What do I mean by that? Now, researchers have found, and there have been practical experiments conducted, where words like, let's say, aggressive leader required, or person with exceptional drive required, tends to alienate some women candidates. Jobs which, or descriptions which carry these kind of words, tend to see a larger component of male candidates applying for some reason, and that can be detrimental to your hiring process, right? It's not creating a very unbiased, neutral image to the external environment. So these softwares, which are again driven by AI engines, are able to help you fine tune and present a very neutral JD. Also, they work on the other side in terms of, again, coming back to the point that there is no standardized resume, right, in this country or for the matter in the world. So everyone has a new designer JD, and many a time these are created by so-called resume writers. They may not be even accurate. So the whole sourcing piece is able to, the algorithms are able to actually true skills or the candidate from these resumes, and classify them, more importantly rank them in order of quality or suitability for your particular role, do that matching very accurately. And that's where I think there is tremendous potential. In fact, I posted something similar on this on my LinkedIn just yesterday, and the amount of likes it got was pretty impressive. From the point of view that people still agree somewhere that there is a lot to be done in this particular pillar. From a candidate side, unfortunately, yes, because most of the time the complaints, like I said earlier, are candidate company reached out, spoke to me, I never heard back. And what is it that my profile is lacking in terms of the JD? I mean, when I see the JD, I have exactly what they wanted, but I still didn't get a call. So these are some of the areas where there is work happening. There are solutions, and as deployment increases, as the machine learning becomes stronger, this will definitely improve, is my view. Moving on, the screening and assessments piece is the third element of the recruitment cycle, which again has been dramatically upgraded thanks to AI. The first one obviously is a high scale. I mean, we can manage scale like never before. I mean, I don't think this point even needs elaboration. We know what computers are capable of. But the bigger element when you look at recruitment is this. A lot of times companies have restricted their reach to, let's say, tier one campuses because why? They didn't have bandwidth. They have only one talent acquisition head. They have six senior managers. They have five people from business who are willing to go for the on-site interviews, and therefore the organization has no option but to kind of cut down that campus list and say, okay, fine, this year I'll just go to these top 5 institutes, and they become your glorious B school list, which tier one MBA list, and that remains like that for times to come. Thankfully, now we have the systems in place where, and there have been companies like L'Oreal which have actually just opened up their recruitments to institutes across the globe, and have seen that they've managed to pull in 40% more candidates outside of the so-called tier one list that they had earlier, which means that the talent is there. Just because it's not sitting in a tier one institute or not branded as one does not mean that the talent is not good. So with you, when you have technology like this, you're able to kind of explode your screening and assessments piece. The advantage also being that now you're able to do assessments across both cognitive, non-cognitive skills checking. What used to be a 1 hour kind of exercise for, let's say, doing a psychometric test, which is something that has been pretty unchanged for the pretty past 70, 80 years, today can be gamified into something like 10, 12 minutes. And it's not that these are just light-hearted games. The advantage of these platforms is that at the base of it, they use all the learnings, all the research of all the great theories of the past, whether it's a big five theory or the like, where they've taken the entire essence from those theories, the multiple researches that have happened across the globe by different academicians and practitioners, and put them into these engines, which then further the AI piece is actually now driving forward. So you want to assess a candidate for customer care, you can do it. You can assess a candidate. You want to assess a candidate for sales roles, which require a certain different personality, easily doable on an online assessment. Coding, of course, one of the first that came out across different programming languages and stacks, easily done through codathons nowadays. So the biggest element where AI is actually, as we speak, making that difference is the screening and assessments piece. In fact, to the extent that even voice assessments, which are a very critical element of a lot of industries, including the one I come from, ITS, are so well executed through software and these platforms. A reason, because now suddenly today, I don't need to dial into a human being who again will have certain level of subjectivity. If there are two voice assessors, uh, it is unlikely that both of them will be calibrated in all those different elements that we normally check a voice on, whether that's clarity of communication or fluency and so on. So with the AI, with software, you bring in objectivity into the process as well. Critically also, the additive angle, which is the other piece which I spoke about a little bit earlier, is where the chatbots can actually interact with the candidates and get you some of that basic information, which frankly for a human recruiter is a waste of time. How much is your notice period? Can you join earlier? That's something that a candidate can easily provide a chatbot. And today, thanks to aspect of computing called web crawling, a lot of public information, data in public domain can actually also be aggregated, and it goes into that CV profile which the systems create. So in Vikas Dua's CV profile, it could pick up whether I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, what is my post frequency, and so on and so forth, because all of this information is really public domain. And moment I've put it up there, I'm saying to the world, take it and do what you want to do. So it can actually help build a very complete profile of the individual, which in turn human recruiters can actually leverage when they are later down in the process. For example, coming back to that example of the young lady who was attracted by the crash in the company, just imagine the power that it gives the recruiter who knows that before she or she sits in that interview, knowing that our crash is of a great interest to her. And if I just tell her that this is a facility available free of cost for all of us, no questions asked, just imagine the impact that would have on that candidate. So that's why AI can be really additive in your selection process. Moving on. I'm sorry, can you see the screen?
Yeah, yes, because we can see this.
I think it went off. I'll just,
Went off.
sorry, give me a 30 seconds. I'll just pull it back. Sorry guys for this technical. Yeah, it's there. Are we back?
Yes, yes, we can see.
Great. Sorry about that once again. So the interview piece, which is again an extremely critical part of any recruitment cycle, today is unbounded or unshackled from any restrictions of the past, where time, distance, convenience of funds. Largely, this is driven through what I'm sure all of us already know in the post-COVID world, which is your video interview. I'm sure many of you have been using Skype, you have been using Zoom and the others. But when you use a very dedicated recruitment platform, it comes with a lot of additional benefits and advantages, which I'll just share. For example, the AI-driven engines are able to actually profile the candidate from the visual cues and the voice cues that are coming in through that video. So to share with you, can check whether it's a male or female, possibly what nationality, can look at the voice tones in terms of understanding the speech patterns, can also see whether the candidate is smiling, is at ease, is nervous. These platforms are also very strongly proctoring the candidate, that is, they're watching that digital activity. You can't go out off the screen as the interview is happening. And in case they see too much of shifting of the eyes, they're able to flag the candidate as a potential interview that should be reviewed by a human recruiter. So inherently a lot of multiple advantages through this, which help bring out the additional aspects of personality that possibly may be missed by the recruiter. Also, the advantage remains that there is both what we call in the industry as asynchronous and synchronous interviews. So an asynchronous interview is when and it's happening in a lot of job cases nowadays, where the company will send you a link to video interview, and you will just talk into a camera and record your answer to a specific question that is thrown on the screen. It is not something that is you are not across a screen with someone visually seeing you real time, but you're expected to answer that question. So it gives you a very real time or gives the interview a real time view of how quick you are to think and what your knowledge on the given question is. The synchronous video interviews really were similar to what you and I are doing right now, where you're across the screen and I'm on the other side, and we're in some sense having a freewheeling chat. I'm sure the Q&A bit which comes later may be a little bit closer to what I'm trying to convey. So a synchronous interview, for that matter, again, relating it back to the example we shared a while ago, where earlier we were restricted to go to certain campuses or events for our recruitment. Today, you can go to virtually any campus in the country if you're a recruitment leader. You just need to have 2 or 3 people as a panel members who are willing to spend 1 hour or 2 hours of their time and be on a screen like this while the candidates come by one on the other side. So tremendous boost, again, driven by the technology that is there in the base. The last element in the hiring cycle that I would like to talk about is the onboarding and assimilation, a very critical element again, where at the end of the day, at least many of us in recruitment have to heave a sigh of relief relief when the candidate shows up on the appointed date and takes his or her place in the onboarding venue. So these AI systems allow this onboarding to become much smoother, and they increase the level of engaging. How do they do that? Very similar to what you see in a Gmail kind of application today, which gives you predictive text. I'm sure you would have experienced that when you're writing a mail, it throws in some words to you, and you can easily just tab and select those. Similarly, in onboarding, as you'll agree, there's a lot of repetitive information that goes in for various forms, for various documents that you need to fill in. So it reduces a lot of that element by actually capturing information all through the recruitment cycle, keeping it in the system, also adding a bit of that AI driven word pitch or suggestions, so that you can complete your onboarding much more faster. From the hiring manager side, again, the systems can proactively and suggest you whether you'd like to put in a requisition for a laptop and make it a one-click affair, or you would rather have the candidate employee have a desktop once he or she joins. So you have all of these facilities which kind of make life easier at both ends. There is, of course, the whole gamification angle, which enables uh, employees to kind of start getting engaged with the organization before they're even able to join. So it's no longer a case of having to call the candidate 2-3 weeks before the onboarding and take a sense of is everything okay? Have you got your joining kit, and are you coming in on the appointed day? The system can pretty much do that. You can keep sending information. Moment the system sees that the person is not engaging with that information enough, not going through those information dockets, there can be red flags raised in the system where a human being comes into the picture and reaches out to that candidate. It can be a trigger that the candidate is dicey about joining, picking up an alternate offer, and that's where you can really step in and save the day for your organization. And of course, personalization, which is really one of the key pillars of any AI engine, which is where you have options for or suggestions for meetings that can be set up for senior leaders basis the role that a person is joining for, and so on and so forth. So these are some things which, in a traditional recruitment scenario, obviously take a lot of time and energy, and are areas or aspects which can be done much better by automating them. So What are the benefits if I have to list them out or sequence them out in across all the stages? Clearly, you start really by saving time and labor for your team members, for the recruitment function, and for a lot of the other business folks who may be involved in interviews. There is the added benefit of candidate experience. There have been studies which have shown that uh, employees or candidates have found the feedback received through bots better than having not received any feedback at all. There are researches which have again shown that people are by nature somehow, at least that's the situation currently, very polite when they speak to AI driven engines. And I see that with my even my 6-year old when she talks to Alexa and to play a song, and after she's played the song she says thank you Alexa. I mean, in the offline world I'm not sure many people are used to saying thank you to each other even today. So that's something very unique shaping up about how individuals are reacting with the technology, and that's definitely giving a boost to candidate experience. The other big pillar is business engagement, because the moment business gets a more real-time view of what talent acquisition is doing, what steps are being taken in lines of whether it's proactive hiring or whether there are number of candidates in the pipeline at which different stages, the business engagement definitely becomes stronger. And ultimately, if you can hire on time, you can hire the right quality, thanks to the system's advantages that you have, there is definitely a bottom line impact that every organization leader must be, I'm sure, looking for. And I think you should look at it from that real time long term angle also whenever you are starting on a AI journey for recruitment. Are there any challenges along the way? Definitely. It's not an easy path. It takes a lot to go down this path of automating the entire recruitment process, and especially when it comes to suggesting and talking about having it AI driven. For starters, there is the fundamental thing that you must understand about AI is that it's dependent on data. The more the data, the more neutral it's going to be. It's somewhere linked to the bias, which is the second point here. Like we discussed right at the start, after all, algorithms are coded by individuals, and the data starts understanding that as it goes along. The fact is that there have been cases, whether it's Amazon in the UK, where there was an experiment on AI-driven recruitment that took place, and they found that it was rejecting female candidates. There's been a case when Apple launched its credit card, and it found that it was tending to give higher scores or ratings to the white male population in the United States. So there are challenges which are not ironed out. In fact, as per AI researchers, there are 3 stages of AI: weak AI or narrow AI, strong AI or general AI, and of course, super intelligence AI. Many of the AI researchers today believe we are still at the narrow AI stage. Okay, so uh, the fact is, if you try and again do this experiment at home, if you have Alexa and try and ask her to play a particular playlist, such as, let's say, play the best of Kishore Kumar, and shuffle the music, play this and play the second, give the second instruction along with the first, chances are it will not flow through seamlessly. So you've got to break that up into 2 parts, and that's where really AI still needs to go a little step further. But if anything, I would say is that these are all building blocks, and they're shaping up pretty well in my view. Skepticism is the other one, where a lot of HR fraternity members and maybe even the business possibly tend to see this as a new trend, because often it's possibly a combination of resistance to change. But like we discovered during COVID, uh, many companies quickly got onto the board of video interviews, even if they were sitting on the fence earlier or undecided earlier. And business managers who used to earlier say ki, I want the candidate sitting in my room or in call him to the office, today are very happy to interview like this across the screen. So there is no problem other than just pure skepticism there. Legacy tends to be a huge issue because a lot of organizations have installed and invested in a lot of huge HRIS systems in the past. But again, keep in mind, coming back to really the first slide that I showed, which was that timeline of 2003 onwards with LinkedIn to 2010 with Uber. The last 5-7 years have been really transformational for us in across the globe, and especially here in India, because if you look back, that's the time where you had Flipkart, Amazon, Zomato, Oyo literally becoming part of our day-to-day vocabulary. And now we need to help the people in our internal HR, business, TA worlds understand that the world has moved forward, and candidates expect that same level of seamlessness while applying or getting engaged. If you have a form which is very cumbersome, the system keeps breaking off, chances are the best candidates will drop off there. They're not going, they'll make a first impression uh, and not continue with the recruitment process right there in itself. So legacy is something that is a huge challenge and should be overcome. And of course, there's capability. In fact, a number of questions that I got from Peterson through Peterson, thanks to you guys, somewhere are pointed towards this question, which is what are the skills required for the future? Will recruiters become obsolete, and so on and so forth? And I'll spend a few minutes talking about that as well. The fact is that yes, recruitment will undergo sea change. I see the composition of the recruitment team changing. It already is in a lot of forward-thinking organizations. You have embedded digital marketing experts, or at least the a TA team works very closely with the central marketing team to decide upon the recruitment branding and the employer branding elements. You have you will have to have people who are very data savvy, who are data architects, who understand how these platforms work. So need to have an understanding of the technology framework. You will need to have people who are storytellers, because the recruiter's role will evolve to being to that of a storyteller, because the report or the analysis of the candidate will be through a nice PDF which your AI driven engine churns out for you. It will be your CV plus plus, and that will give you enough meat about the candidate. But then you'll need to go back to the candidate and storytell or tell them that right pitch to encourage them to join your organization. You need to be visual, because everything that you get through the data or through the entire engine will need to be something that is very visually representative, which your senior leadership can understand in terms of trends and analytics that you've pulled out of your recruitment data. So these are typically, if I am able to relate them, similar to what you're seeing in the field of marketing today. Your digital analysts, your data visualizers, your data crunchers, and so on, and data scientists, and so on and so forth. So think along these lines, because recruitment will become more and more data centric as we go along. So we started with one slide or a pictorial right at the start. My last slide is really this one, which is that for a recruiter, the whole journey is about finding that one needle in the haystack, or finding that one yellow umbrella amongst the sea of black umbrella. And AI is got that potential to get you closer to that. If not now, at least there is significant movement, significant distance being covered, and that's eventually where we will get, where candidates sitting at home, not even possibly looking out, will possibly get a pop-up or an email triggering them an opportunity from your organization, where they are a perfect match for you. So that's what AI has got the potential to do. I hope I was able to throw some light on this very engaging topic. I thoroughly enjoyed putting together these slides for you, trying to put some of the conceptual stuff I knew into a little theoretical frame. But I'm happy to share any more thoughts or suggestions with you if you have any. Peterson, that's really it from me today for this masterclass.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vikas. So we have a question out here from our participants. We have it from Mr. Hari. Uh, there are many biased hirings by the operation or HR that happens. How can it help recruiter at that point of time?
So, Hari, good question. And I think this is exactly the pain area that AI to some extent is trying to and hopefully will solve, if not immediately in the future. See, there is a bias, no doubt, amongst all of us. And I'm sure we have experienced that at various stages when we are interviewing. There are some people who tell you blatantly as hiring managers that I don't want X profile. Uh, because my so and so project is undergoing a critical stage and I want someone 24/7, and they'll come up with all these excuses. There are some who will not do it, but they will reject silently. The bigger problem also is unconscious bias that sometimes we ourselves are not aware of. And the whole premise of AI is that when you feed it enough data about successful people in your organization, about people who have joined and performed and lived for a reasonably good period of time, that AI engine able to kind of determine multiple trends and see which is that so-called success profile. Let me share a simple example with you from my experience. When I was heading the campus program at Wipro BPS, we used to, every season of campus hiring, we used to do a research on attrition of the campus hires, 6 months, 1 year down. And invariably, the conversation would shift to around whether it is the BTech campus hires which are attriting or it is the non-BTech group. And to be honest, as human beings using an Excel sheet, at best we are able to manipulate or play with 2, 3 variables. So we could only manipulate source campus and qualification BTech, qualification non-BTech. But you and I both know that when a candidate comes in, there are so many multiple dimensions that come into play. That could be, let's say, let's take even BTech for an example. It could be a civil, it could be electrical, it could be computer science, it could be information technology. It could be which institute that particular student is from. It could be which school did he graduate out from. It could be which city that student passed is from, and so on and so forth. So humans, by design, by the capacity of our brain power, are not able to see trends or understand data in so many complexities or across so many variables. But machine learning and artificial intelligence is able to do exactly that. So today you feed in that same data, which I used to struggle with way back in 2006, 2007. I'm sure I would get so much more insight out of that in terms of saying, this is the right profile for you. It's possibly, I'm just saying hypothetically, a candidate from a tier 2 city who studied in a English medium school has graduated from one of the top 25 institute. These are the 25 institute, and they're the ones who tend to be existing or surviving for more lengthier time in your organization. So I hope in some way I've given that answer. But as humans, let's be very clear. I don't think we will be, at least in irrespective of how much training you do for your business managers, for your HR team, be able to come out of the biases that we have collectively. Individuals may, but collectively will be difficult.
Rightly said. So now this takes us to our next question. That's from Dhruval. Do you think we need to change the hiring process, which is right now heavily reliant on interviews, even when we know that the accuracy of interview process for hiring is low? Can you mention some examples of companies using AI or creative process for hiring?
Sure. So, good question again. The fact is, interviews, like you rightly said, and you don't seem to have much faith on interviews. Possibly the reason comes again from the fact that for every candidate, for every position, there are different people interviewing, and they come with their own biases, with their own mindsets, and sometimes it's often simple things like there's a business review in 1 hour. My mind is really there, and it's not really with the candidate right now as we speak. So what AI is doing, or what these platforms are doing really, is to take away some of that grunt work and bring it to a more streamlined, standardized format. So at least give you a little bit of a base so that you can, let's say potentially, if you are cutting out, let's say 75% of your interviews because screening or the bots have taken care of that, you can spend more quality time with those remaining few candidates that you really want to evaluate at depth. And for that reason, maybe then what you can do is that select these 5 leaders in your organization, or 20, whatever the scale is, and say you are the approved or accredited interviewers. get them into a standardized assessment format or a scale and say that at least here the variation will be there, but it will still not be this much. It may be a little bit here and there, right? So the aim of using technology is at one end to streamline and cut away some of the flab, but at the same time, it can give that opportunity to optimize the remaining part of your human processes where they come into play, in my view.
So utilization of those aspects, data, in taking up your rightly decisions that we talk of. So that this data that we collect through this process will help the recruiters in defining the entire selection that they intend to do.
Yeah.
Rightly said. Now we have our next question from Srinivasan. How do we scale the implementation on AI for startups?
So again, AI for startups, the question is from the point of view of implementing it in your organization, right?
Yeah,
So for
yes,
AI,
please.
one of the critical pillars, to be fair, is that you need large amount of data sets, right? So that will be a struggle you will obviously have right at the start. If you're a small organization, you want to put in AI. But I'm going to give you an example, and I think each organization will need to keep this in mind when they start on this journey. Is that, let's assume you are driving a car and moving out of your city limits, going onto the highway to visit another town. In the city, you drive at, let's say, 40 to 50 kilometers per hour. When you hit the highway, you scale up to, let's say, 70, 80 for some time, for the first half an hour, 40 minutes. You get comfortable with that. And it's only then after that that you go to 100, 120, isn't that? It will be very rash if you suddenly go to 120 and say, boss, I've arrived. It's the same thing in the AI journey. So if you're not doing any automation or not implemented AI right now, the approach should be to do it in a graded manner. Start small, put in automation in your processes, but have a greater element of human involvement within them. What do I mean by that? If you look at let's say the screening stage, you shouldn't right at the start say that AI will screen 100% of my employees. You can let AI do its work, come up with a score, let your recruiters also interview and come up with a separate score. Then find the correlation between those, see where the opportunities lie, look at upgrading your recruiter so that the AI engine also becomes stronger. Then once you've reached a level where you are looking at 70-80% accurate decisions between AI and recruiter, then you start removing the recruiter involvement or reducing it. That's the graded path to adoption that I would guide you with.
See, it's all about following the right process that we
Correct.
talk of, identifying, comparing, and then taking the right decision on how we move ahead.
Sure.
So we have a question from Radha. I am into recruitments. I see very good resumes and give a bad interview. Some have bad resumes and gives very good interview. If recruitment is data driven, how do we overcome this to get the right candidate through AI?
Great, lovely question again. And while no simple answer, Radha, bringing you back to the presentation earlier, if you look at data being your, and I'll take the example here of Iron Man. Is everyone familiar with Iron Man? I'm sure. He's got this huge exoskeleton on top of him, which gives him this power. And that's really what these platforms are for a recruiter. It's not that the recruiter has disappeared, not doing any value added work, will not do. It's just that you need to understand what that suit can give you, right? So to your point about a great resume, but the interview turned out to be very bad. Chances are, I'm not saying this was the case, but chances are that candidate got a resume written by some resume writers. There are many available in the market. We all know that. You can pay a few thousand rupees and get a flashy resume. Uh, Now, in such a scenario, assume you had sent out a video interview request to this candidate, asynchronous video interview, which means you don't need to be there. You just send the link, candidate records his video, and you had just managed to get that video clip on your phone while going to work or wherever and just seen it and said, oh my God, this doesn't seem to be good enough. You've saved time in evaluating that CV. You've saved time in calling that candidate, doing a basic screening, setting up an interview time, scheduling it, getting onto a call, spending 15 minutes. Because what happens normally in interviews also, once we've scheduled it, then out of respect for the candidate, we end up going through 15, 20 minutes, even if we know in the first 1 minute that this is not the right person for the job. With AI, with technology, in that video clip, you would have decided in the first 1 to 2 minutes that fine, this is not working out, and you would have rejected the candidate, correct? So that's where you need to kind of visualize the recruitment platforms and see which is the part that works well for you. You need not have one the whole stack. You can look at maybe onboarding initially if that's a pain area for you. You look at sourcing if that's what troubles you, and so on.
So identifying the pain areas and working towards it, and see how AI can help us in rectifying and bringing solution to that.
Yeah.
Rightly said. So moving on to our next question, that's from Shilpi. Dear sir, when the software catch the resume based on keywords, if keywords not mentioned in the system don't catch, hence in such situation, do you think that independent technology works under such situation under recruitment process?
So chances are the keywords are there. Even the job portals that we use today are very well created and have very strong engines in the back, and a lot of them are in fact upgraded now to AI and ML also. But the fact is that this is, again, I keep coming back to the point of view, is that we have not yet arrived. It's not that today AI is in the final form that it ever will be. It will continue to improve as more candidates profiles enter the system, as more companies start using it, as more data comes into public domain. Today, one of the biggest problems we have in a country like India is that our systems are very independent, are very disjointed. They are independent of, if you look at the larger players, everyone has their own secure databases, right? And it's fine. I think everyone needs to control that. But the point of view is that by design, then you're getting limited only to those 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 employees that exist in your organization. But the fact is, as you hire 500, 1,000, 2,000 year on year, your data becomes more and more reliable, more and more non-biased, and that's where I think the real value comes in. It's like coming to another example, Netflix. The more you watch it, the more its predictive engine can actually tell you or propose you the right show to watch. Because it actually knows in the background which is the kind of show that you like to watch on a weekday, which is the show that you prefer to watch on a Sunday, what is the time you like to watch, and all of this is getting captured every time you log into that system.
So it keeps learning,
Yes.
and then afterwards it kind of improvises.
Bang on.
So we have multiple questions coming up, but like we'll be having that shared with you separately, keeping in mind the time constraints and all. But one last question is what I would like to cover out here is, which AI tool do you recommend for recruitment and use by your organization?
I'm not sure in the forum I should honestly call out, because I work with a lot of them, and each one of them I have very good relationship with some of the founders. But yeah, offline, if you want to get any guidance, feel free to reach out. There are some really amazing tools out there which are doing a fabulous job and transforming recruitment.
Great. So thank you, Vikas, for such an insightful session. Firstly, the ability of AI to help in the entire recruitment process, letting us know how can we identify the right AI tool to overcome these challenges and the advantages of deploying AI. And the third part is data being the key essence, and AI playing a vital role in synchronizing these data in helping us derive the right kind of analysis to help recruitment make decisions. Thank you so much.